I am Allison, 28, an architect who designed my dream lakefront home with my own two hands. 10 years ago, my parents Thomas and Karen disowned me for choosing architecture over medicine. I scraped by, built my career, and finally created a beautiful life with my partner James. Then, out of nowhere, my parents called after a decade of silence. Not to apologize, but to demand I host my golden child brother Michael's wedding at my home. I refused. They decided to come anyway. If you're going through family drama too, let me know where you're watching from. Hit like and subscribe to join others who understand what standing up to manipulation feels like. Growing up, I always knew where I stood in our family hierarchy. My brother Michael was the golden child, the cherished firstborn son who could do no wrong in our parents' eyes. I was the academically gifted, but somehow perpetually disappointing daughter. My earliest memories are tinted with this imbalance. Michael's baseball trophies dominated our living room mantel, while my academic certificates were tucked away in a drawer. When I brought home straight A's, my father Thomas would nod and say, "That's expected." When Michael managed a B-, my parents celebrated with dinner at his favorite restaurant. Our home in suburban Connecticut was comfortable, upper middle class, and suffocating. Both my parents were successful physicians, my father a cardiologist and my mother Karen an anesthesiologist. Their expectations for their children were predetermined before we could even speak. Michael would follow my father into cardiology. I would become a pediatrician like my mother's sister. The problem began when I discovered architecture in high school. My art teacher, Ms. Reynolds, noticed how I would sketch buildings during lunch breaks. She introduced me to architectural concepts, gave me books on famous architects, and encouraged me to explore this passion. For the first time, I felt a calling that was uniquely mine. "You have a gift, Allison, MS." Reynolds told me after I completed my first serious design project junior year. "You see spaces in a way most people don't." When I tentatively shared my interest in pursuing architecture with my parents, their dismissal was immediate. "That's a nice hobby, but not a real career path," my mother said, not looking up from her medical journal. "Architects spend years struggling before they make any money, if they ever do," my father added. "Medicine is secure, respected. Architecture is for dreamers." Still, I applied to architecture programs secretly, alongside the pre-med tracks my parents selected. When acceptance letters arrived, including a full scholarship to Cornell's architecture program, I gathered my courage and tried again. "I got a full ride to Cornell for architecture," I announced at dinner. "I want to pursue this." The argument that followed was brutal. Words like ungrateful, selfish, and throwing away your potential were hurled at me. Michael sat silently, watching the destruction like it was a tennis match. The ultimatum came the night before college decisions were due. "Medicine or nothing," my father said. "We won't pay a cent toward this architecture fantasy. Your choice." I chose my dream. The next morning, I accepted Cornell's offer, hands shaking but resolute. By evening, my belongings were in garbage bags on the front porch. My bank account, which had held my childhood savings, was emptied, legally, as my parents had been co-signers. My cell phone was cut off. At 18, I was homeless, nearly penniless, and completely on my own. The next 4 years were a blur of exhaustion. I worked 3 part-time jobs while maintaining my scholarship requirements. My apartment was a converted storage room in an elderly woman's house in exchange for helping her with groceries and yard work. I ate ramen and whatever was on clearance. During holidays, when dorms closed, I house sat or crashed on friends' couches. During sophomore year, in a moment of weakness during Christmas break, I attempted reconciliation. I called my parents from a friend's phone. My mother answered, listened to my voice for 3 seconds, then said, "You made your choice," and hung up. After graduation, I landed an entry-level position at a small but innovative firm in Boston. Over the next 6 years, I climbed from junior designer to project lead. I saved obsessively, lived modestly, and at 26, purchased a neglected lakefront property an hour outside the city. Over 2 years, I renovated it into my dream home, a modern, glass and wood structure that balanced with the natural landscape. It was featured in 2 design magazines. Along the way, I met James, a structural engineer with kind eyes and a quiet confidence that balanced my intensity. He moved in last year. And for the first time since leaving home, I felt like I had a real family again. My career continued ascending. My newest project, a sustainable community center, was gathering attention in architectural circles. I had created a beautiful life from nothing but determination and talent. Then, on a sunny Tuesday morning, my office phone rang with a number I still recognized despite the passing years. "Allison, this is your mother." My heart stuttered. 10 years of silence broken by that familiar voice. Still crisp and authoritative. "Mom?" I barely whispered the word, forgotten on my tongue. "Yes, it's me. How are you?" The casual tone, as if we'd spoken last week instead of a decade ago, left me speechless. After an awkward pause, I managed, "I'm well." "Why are you calling?" A flicker of hope sparked in my chest. Perhaps illness had softened them. Perhaps they'd seen my work somewhere and felt pride. Perhaps 10 years was enough time for healing to begin. How naive that hope would prove to be. "We saw your home in Architectural Digest." My mother continued, her voice carrying that distinctive tone of forced pleasantness I remembered from childhood interactions with people she wanted to impress. "You did?" I was genuinely surprised. My parents had never shown interest in my work. "Yes, it's quite interesting. The lake setting is beautiful. That's actually why I'm calling." My grip tightened on the phone. Something in her voice triggered an old warning system inside me. "Michael is engaged," she announced. "To Rebecca Sullivan. Her family is quite well connected in Boston. Perhaps you've heard of Sullivan Development." I hadn't, but nodded as if she could see me. "Congratulations to Michael," I said cautiously. "The wedding is in 3 months." They had booked the Lakeside Gardens venue, but there's been a disaster. Flooding damage from the recent storms. They can't accommodate the wedding now. And everything else is booked. I remained silent, already sensing where this was heading. "Your property would be perfect. Right on the lake, plenty of space for tents. It would be such a help to your brother." Not a question. A statement. As if my property were a family resource, not my hard-earned private home. "Mom, I don't think that would work," I said carefully. "My place isn't set up for events and—" "Nonsense," she interrupted. "We saw the aerial photos. Your yard is plenty large enough. We'd bring in everything needed. You wouldn't have to do anything but allow it." The presumption stole my breath. Not "could we possibly," or "we know this is asking a lot." Just the expectation of compliance. "Mom, I'm sorry about their venue issues, but I'm not comfortable hosting a wedding. Especially not with—" I hesitated, then pushed forward. "Not with family I haven't spoken to in 10 years. "Oh, don't be so dramatic, Allison," she sighed. "That was all so long ago. This is about Michael's special day. No acknowledgement of their actions. No apology. Not even recognition that disowning your child might create some awkwardness worth addressing. I've already mentioned to Rebecca's mother what a lovely alternative we have. She's quite relieved." My stomach dropped. "You told them they could use my home without asking me first." "Well, I knew you'd want to help your brother. Family comes first, after all." The irony was so bitter I almost laughed. "Family comes first? You kicked me out at 18. Dad emptied my bank account. You hung up on me when I called at Christmas." A beat of silence. "That's all water under the bridge. This isn't about you, Allison. Don't be selfish." The familiar accusation hit its mark. I'd been called selfish for having my own dreams, for making my own choices, for existing as anything other than an extension of their expectations. "I'm sorry, but my answer is no," I said, surprised at how steady my voice remained. I can suggest some other venues that might have availability, or perhaps. Let me speak to your father, she interrupted, and before I could respond, my father's voice came through. Allison, this is ridiculous. Your brother needs your help. Dad, after everything we did for you, you can't do this one thing? This property of yours wouldn't even exist if we hadn't paid for your education. I blinked in disbelief. You didn't pay for my education. I had a scholarship. And I worked 3 jobs to cover the rest. You cut me off completely. We gave you 18 years of food, shelter, and opportunities. Now you have a chance to repay some of that debt. I felt a familiar tightness in my chest, the same sensation I experienced during childhood confrontations when my reality was twisted into something unrecognizable. My home is not available, I stated firmly. I'm sorry about Michael's venue problems, but I can't help with this. Can't or won't, my father snapped. Both, I replied honestly. I heard muffled conversation. Then my mother returned to the phone. Rebecca's parents have already told half the guests about the lake house solution. The invitations are being reprinted as we speak. You would embarrass the entire family by refusing now. I am refusing now, I said. And I'm not responsible for promises you made about my property without my permission. You'll see what happens when you're selfish, Allison. My father's voice came from an extension. Family remembers these things. The line went dead. I sat at my desk, shaking. All the old feelings of inadequacy and guilt rushed back. Was I being unreasonable? Selfish? Should I sacrifice my privacy and comfort for family harmony? That evening, I relayed the conversation to James as we sat on our deck overlooking the lake. They haven't spoken to you in 10 years, and their first contact is to demand use of your home. James asked, incredulous. No apology, no attempt to rebuild a relationship first. None, I confirmed. And they've apparently already told the bride's family it's happening here. James took my hand. Your parents created this situation, not you. You're allowed to have boundaries. I know, but I stared out at the water. I can't shake this feeling that they won't take no for an answer. James's eyes narrowed. What do you mean? They've never respected my boundaries before. Why would they start now? As the sun set over the lake, casting our home in golden light, I couldn't ignore the growing sense of unease. This wasn't over. A week passed with no further contact from my parents. I began to hope they had accepted my refusal and found another solution. Then the calls started. The first came from a catering company I'd never heard of. Ms. Hayes? This is Coastal Catering. I'm calling to confirm the menu selections for the wedding reception at your property on June 12th. I froze. There must be a mistake. I'm not hosting a wedding. Oh! The woman sounded confused. We have a contract for the Hayes-Sullivan wedding at 142 Lakeshore Drive. Is this not your address? It is, but I never authorized this event, I explained. Who contracted your services? A Mr. Thomas Hayes. He signed all the paperwork and paid the deposit. My father had not only moved forward with plans, but had apparently forged my consent. Before I could fully process this, another call came in from a florist asking about delivery access points to the venue. Then a rental company about chairs and tents. A portable restroom provider. A valet parking service. A string quartet. With each call, my anxiety spiraled. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a coordinated campaign to force my compliance through momentum and public pressure. I spent an entire afternoon contacting each vendor, explaining the situation and requesting cancellation. Most were sympathetic, but pointed to binding contracts signed by my father. Cancellation would mean forfeiting substantial deposits. I'm sorry, the florist said kindly. But we've already ordered specialty blooms from overseas. Your father was very specific about the arrangements. That evening, a design colleague texted me. Saw the news about hosting your brother's wedding. The Sullivan connection is huge, great networking opportunity. Confused, I asked what she meant. She sent me a link to Rebecca's mother's Instagram account. There, in vibrant display, were photos of my property taken from the lake, accompanied by a gushing post. Thrilled to announce the new venue for Rebecca and Michael's special day. This stunning lakefront architectural gem belongs to Michael's talented sister. Family coming together to create perfect memories. #Sullivan-Hayes wedding, #lakefront dream. The post had hundreds of likes and comments congratulating them on the gorgeous family venue. Several commenters mentioned looking forward to seeing the property in person. My hands shook with anger and violation. They were using social media to create public expectation, making it increasingly difficult for me to refuse without appearing heartless. I called my parents immediately. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" I demanded when my mother answered. "You've contacted vendors and told everyone the wedding is happening at my house after I explicitly said no." Language, Allison, my mother chided, as if I were still a teenager. "We assumed you'd reconsider once you had time to think about it. It's just one day. Stop being difficult. This is my home, not a venue for rent. You can't just decide to use it without my permission." "Your brother has been there for this family his entire life," she replied coldly. "The least you could do is offer your home for his special day." "I built this home myself after you threw me out," I reminded her. "Michael has never even seen it." "Neither have you. All the more reason to share it now. Family healing and all that." Before I could respond, I received a text from an unknown number. Opening it revealed a message from Michael. "Sis, don't know why you're being difficult about the wedding. Mom and Dad have already done all the work. Just let it happen. It would mean a lot to Rebecca." After 10 years of silence. This was his first communication. No hello. No how are you. Just entitlement wrapped in familial obligation. I replied, "This is my private home, not a wedding venue." I said no. That should be respected. His response was immediate. "Don't be so selfish. It's just one day." The same accusation, passed down from parent to golden child. I blocked his number. That night, unable to sleep, I searched social media for more information. What I found horrified me. An event page for the Hayes Sullivan lakefront wedding included my full address. Posts from Rebecca's friends discussed carpooling to my home. Comments about looking forward to exploring the award-winning architecture. Worst of all, I discovered digital invitations had already been sent to over 150 guests, with my address prominently displayed along with accommodation recommendations for nearby hotels. The wedding date was just 3 weeks away. I had a full-blown anxiety attack. James found me on the bathroom floor, hyperventilating, clutching my phone with the evidence of my family's complete disregard for my boundaries. "They're coming anyway," I gasped between breaths. "All of them. They're just going to show up and take over." James's expression hardened in a way I'd never seen. "We need to take legal action." Against my own family? It would be a public spectacle. "Allison, they're creating the spectacle. You're just protecting yourself." As my breathing steadied, I felt a strange calm replace the panic. This violation had crossed a line from which there was no return. My remaining hope for eventual reconciliation evaporated, replaced by a clear-eyed determination. "You're right," I said finally. "I need to protect myself. But I'm going to do it my way." The next morning, I called my friend Stephanie, a lawyer who specialized in property disputes. Over coffee on my deck, I laid out the entire situation. "This is a clear case of attempted trespassing," she said after reviewing the vendor contracts and social media posts. "They have no legal right to use your property without consent, regardless of family relationship." "What are my options?" I asked. "We could send a cease and desist letter, file for a temporary restraining order, or pursue damages for misrepresentation. But frankly, given the timeline and family dynamics, I'm concerned they'll ignore legal notices." "They absolutely would," I confirmed. "They've never respected boundaries on paper or in person." Stephanie tapped her pen thoughtfully. "Then we need to prepare for the possibility they'll show up anyway. Document everything. Save all communications refusing permission. Install security cameras if you don't already have them. That afternoon, James helped me install a comprehensive security system with cameras covering all access points to our property. We documented every communication, created a timeline of events, and compiled screenshots of social media posts using my address without permission. I also spoke with my neighbor Marcus, a retired police officer who lived in the only other house accessible by our private lane. "That's completely unacceptable," he said when I explained the situation. "Patricia and I will keep an eye out for unusual activity. Just say the word if you need backup." Next, I contacted the local police department's non-emergency line to explain the potential situation. "We're expecting unauthorized individuals may attempt to set up a large event on our property against our explicitly stated wishes," I explained. "I want to document my refusal in advance." The officer, a woman named Riley, was understanding. "We don't typically get involved in family disputes unless there's a crime in progress, but I'll make a note in our system. If you need assistance on the day, reference this conversation." My most difficult call was to Rebecca herself. I found her number through social media and reached out directly. "Rebecca? This is Allison Hayes, Michael's sister." "Allison. Oh my goodness, I'm so excited to finally talk to you. Your home looks absolutely stunning in the photos. We're so grateful you're letting us use it for the wedding." My heart sank. "Rebecca, that's actually why I'm calling. I never agreed to host your wedding. My parents moved forward with these plans without my permission." Silence stretched across the line. "But your parents said you were thrilled to help. That you suggested it when their venue fell through." "I'm sorry, but that's not true. I explicitly told them no when they asked. I haven't spoken to my family in 10 years before this." Her voice became small. 10 years? Michael told me you were just busy with work, that you traveled a lot. We've been estranged since I was 18. I've never even met you. Though I'm sure you're lovely. But I can't host your wedding. My home is not available." She began to cry. "Everything's already arranged. People have booked flights. The invitations are sent. What am I supposed to do now?" Despite myself, I felt a pang of sympathy. Rebecca was caught in my parents' manipulation just as I had been for years. "I'm truly sorry they put you in this position," I said gently. "I can suggest some alternative venues that might have last-minute availability." Her tears turned to a strange determination. "No, we'll figure something out. Maybe we can still work this out. I'll talk to Michael and your parents. There must be a misunderstanding." After hanging up, I realized Rebecca, too, had been enfolded into my parents' reality distortion field. She wasn't going to help de-escalate the situation. That evening, James suggested we simply leave town for the weekend of the planned wedding. We could go to my parents' lake house in Vermont. Let them arrive to an empty property with no access. I considered it. Running away would certainly be easier. But something inside me rebelled at the thought. "No," I said finally. "This is my home. I worked too hard for it. If I leave, I'm sending the message that my boundaries don't matter, that they can steamroll me if they push hard enough." This ends now. With new resolve, I developed a 3-part plan. First, I would be present and physically block access to my property, documenting everything. Second, I would arrange a backup plan for the innocent guests caught in the middle. Third, I would prepare evidence to show my family, especially Michael, exactly what had transpired over the years. The next 3 weeks were a flurry of preparations. I took the wedding weekend off work. I collected and organized documents, photos, and recordings. I made arrangements with local businesses. I also assembled a support team of friends who understood the situation and were willing to stand with me. James, of course. My best friend Natalie. My colleague Drew. And neighbors Marcus and Patricia. As the wedding date approached, my anxiety returned in waves, but underneath it was a bedrock of certainty. For perhaps the first time since leaving home at 18, I felt completely justified in my actions. This wasn't about being difficult or selfish. This was about basic respect. The day before the wedding, I received a final text from my mother. Vendors will arrive at 7 a.m. Please ensure the gate is unlocked. I didn't respond. The time for words had passed. Tomorrow would be about action. I woke before dawn on the day of the wedding, adrenaline already coursing through my system. James and I had barely slept, both of us anticipating the confrontation to come. "Are you ready for this?" he asked, handing me coffee on our deck as the sun began to rise over the lake. "As ready as I'll ever be," I replied, watching the mist rise from the water. The peacefulness of the scene stood in stark contrast to the chaos I knew was coming. At 6:45 a.m., the security system alerted us to vehicles approaching the gate at the end of our long driveway. I watched on the monitor as 2 large rental trucks pulled up, followed by a van with Coastal Catering emblazoned on the side. "Right on schedule," James muttered. We walked down to the gate together, where we found workers already unloading equipment. "Good morning," I said pleasantly. "Can I help you?" A man with a clipboard looked up. "Morning, ma'am. We're here for the Hayes-Sullivan wedding setup." "I'm Allison Hayes, and I didn't authorize any wedding on my property." The man frowned, checking his paperwork. "I have a contract right here, signed by Thomas Hayes for this address. May I see that?" I asked. He handed me the document, and sure enough, there was my father's signature where mine should have been. The authorization for property use had a signature that was clearly meant to pass as mine, but was obviously forged. "This isn't my signature," I explained, taking photos of the document with my phone. "I never authorized this event." "I'm sorry you've been put in this position, but there can't be a wedding here today." The catering manager looked distressed. "Ma'am, we've prepared food for 150 people. We have staff scheduled. The deposit's been paid." "I understand, and I'm truly sorry." "You should contact Thomas Hayes about the situation. He misrepresented his authority to use this property." As we were speaking, my phone rang. It was Rebecca. "Allison, we're on our way with the bridal party for pre-ceremony photos. The makeup artist is running late, but we should be there in about 30 minutes. "Rebecca," I said firmly, "as I told you before, I am not hosting your wedding. There will be no event at my home today. But the caterers, the rentals, everything is arranged." Her voice rose in panic. "Without my permission. I'm sorry you're caught in the middle of this, but you need to make other arrangements immediately." She began to cry. "What am I supposed to tell everyone? Where are we supposed to go?" Before I could respond, a car pulled up to the gate. My parents had arrived. "I have to go," I told Rebecca. "Please don't bring your wedding party here. You won't be allowed on the property." I ended the call as my parents stepped out of their luxury SUV. My mother was already barking orders at the confused vendors while my father strode toward me, his face set in the intimidating expression I remembered from childhood confrontations. "What is the meaning of this?" he demanded. "Why are these people standing around instead of setting up?" "Because I'm not hosting this wedding," I said calmly. "As I told you repeatedly. Don't be ridiculous, Allison. Everything is arranged. People are on their way." Arrangements you made without my permission, using contracts with forged signatures. My father's face reddened. "We are your parents. We don't need permission to use your property for a family event. Actually, legally, you do. This is private property, and you're not welcome here." My mother joined us, her perfect makeup already showing stress cracks. "Allison, stop this nonsense immediately. The minister will be here any minute. Rebecca's parents have invited the governor." "That's not my problem," I replied. "You created this situation by ignoring my clearly stated boundaries." More vehicles began arriving. Rental staff, florists, a photography team, and then guests in formal attire, looking confused at the collection of people and equipment clustered at the gate rather than on the property. James stepped forward. "Everyone, Please listen up. There has been a misunderstanding. No wedding has been authorized at this property. The owners have not given permission for this event. Murmurs of confusion spread through the growing crowd. A woman in an expensive suit whom I recognized from photos as Rebecca's mother approached. What's going on? Why isn't setup underway? My mother pulled her aside, speaking in hushed but clearly agitated tones. The woman's expression shifted from confusion to embarrassment to anger as she looked back and forth between my mother and me. Another car arrived, and Michael stepped out, looking handsome in his tuxedo. He strode directly to me. What the hell, Allison? You're really going through with this? Ruining my wedding out of spite? I'm not ruining anything, Michael. I simply refuse to host an event I never agreed to. This is the consequence of ignoring my clearly communicated boundaries. It's just one day, he shouted, loud enough that the gathering crowd fell silent. One day you could do something for this family instead of always thinking about yourself. I haven't been part of this family for 10 years, I reminded him. By all of your choices, not mine. Rebecca arrived next, already in her wedding dress, makeup streaked with tears. She ran to Michael, then looked at me with a mixture of anger and desperation. Please, she begged. Please don't do this to us. The crowd had grown to at least 50 people, all watching the family drama unfold with uncomfortable expressions. My neighbors Marcus and Patricia had appeared as promised, standing quietly near our property line in silent support. My father decided to take matters into his own hands. He stepped toward the gate, reaching for the latch. We're done with this discussion. The wedding is happening. I blocked his access. No, it's not. Move aside, Allison, he growled. This is private property. You do not have permission to enter. He reached out as if to physically move me aside, and James immediately stepped between us. Sir, don't make this worse than it already is. My father's face contorted with rage. This is family business. Stay out of it. This is trespassing. I corrected. And James is my family now. That's when I nodded to Marcus, who made a phone call. Within minutes, a police cruiser pulled up, and Officer Riley stepped out. What seems to be the problem here? She asked, though her knowing glance at me confirmed she remembered our previous conversation. These people are attempting to access private property without permission, I explained. I'm the homeowner, Allison Hayes. Officer Riley nodded. I remember our conversation, Ms. Hayes. She turned to my father. Sir, do you have permission to be on this property? I'm her father, he blustered. I don't need permission. Actually, you do, Officer Riley corrected. That's how private property works. If the owner asks you to leave and you refuse, that's trespassing. This is absurd, my mother interjected. We have guests here, important people. The governor is coming. The governor would also need permission to enter private property, Officer Riley replied calmly. Now, I suggest everyone begin making alternative arrangements. MS. Hayes has made her position clear. As if on cue, 2 large charter buses pulled around the corner and parked on the wide shoulder of the road. What's this? My father demanded. I smiled for the first time that morning. Part 2 of my response. I may not be willing to host your wedding, but I'm not heartless. I turned to the confused crowd of guests. I've arranged alternative transportation to the Grand Lakeside Hotel, where their ballroom is prepared to host your ceremony and reception. All vendors have been notified of the location change. The buses will take you there now. Rebecca's mouth fell open. You arranged another venue. Yes, a proper one with staff and facilities for a wedding. I called in a favor with the manager, who happens to be a client. They had a last-minute cancellation. For a moment, relief washed over Rebecca's face. Then she glanced at my parents, whose expressions had turned thunderous. We're not going to some hotel, my mother spat. This is Michael's sister's home. This is where the wedding should be. Rebecca looked torn, but her father stepped forward. Karen, Thomas. I think we should accept Allison's solution. Our guests are arriving. They need somewhere to go. John, you don't understand, my mother began. I understand perfectly. Rebecca's father interrupted. You told us Allison had enthusiastically offered her home. That was clearly not the case. You've put everyone in an impossible situation, and Allison has found a gracious way out. We're taking it. He turned to the guests. Everyone, please board the buses. The wedding will proceed at the Grand Lakeside Hotel. We apologize for the confusion. People began moving toward the buses, some looking relieved, others still confused. The vendors started repacking their vehicles, calling their teams to redirect to the new location. Rebecca gave me a complicated look, part gratitude, part resentment, before allowing her mother to guide her toward their car. Michael stood frozen, looking between our parents and the departing wedding party. Michael, come on, Rebecca called. We need to get to the new venue. After a moment's hesitation, he followed her, but not before giving me a look of pure betrayal. As the crowd dispersed, only my parents remained, facing me across the gate that separated my property from the road. This isn't over, my father said, his voice deadly quiet. Actually, I replied, I think it is. As the last of the wedding guests departed on the charter buses, an uncomfortable silence descended. My parents stood rigid with fury, the morning sun highlighting the decades of disapproval etched into their faces. You've always been determined to embarrass this family, my mother finally said, her voice trembling with anger. From the moment you defied our wishes about your education. Embarrass the family? I repeated incredulously. You're the ones who forged my signature on vendor contracts and told everyone they could use my home without permission. We shouldn't need permission, my father exploded. We're your parents. We raised you, fed you, clothed you. Until you didn't, I reminded him. Until you threw me out for daring to have my own dreams. Your selfish dreams, he corrected. We had a plan for you, a secure future. You threw it away for this, building nonsense. I gestured to my home behind me, the award-winning design I'd created with my own hands. This building nonsense built me a life you tried to deny me. And now you've ruined your brother's wedding day, my mother added. Do you have any idea what this will do to our reputation? The governor was coming. I didn't ruin anything, I said firmly. I provided an alternative venue at my own expense. The wedding will proceed without interruption. The only thing ruined is your attempt to steamroll my boundaries. Boundaries, my father scoffed. Such therapeutic nonsense. Family doesn't have boundaries. Healthy families respect each other, James interjected quietly. They don't disown their children for following their passion. My father turned his glare to James. You know nothing about our family. I know what Allison has told me. James replied evenly. And I've seen how you treat her firsthand today. A car door slammed behind us. Michael had returned alone, still in his tuxedo, his face flushed with anger. Rebecca is crying her eyes out, he accused, striding toward me. Her perfect day is ruined because you couldn't let go of old grievances for one day. Old grievances? I stared at him in disbelief. Michael, they disowned me, emptied my bank account, left me homeless at 18, and you never once reached out in 10 years. You chose to leave, he argued. You chose your precious architecture over family. I chose not to be a doctor. That's all. They chose to cut me off completely in response. You were always difficult. My mother interjected. Always defiant. We gave you everything. Accept acceptance, I said quietly. Accept love without conditions. Michael's expression faltered slightly. What are you talking about? They loved you. We all did. Did they tell you they emptied my college savings account? That I worked 3 jobs through school while maintaining a scholarship? That I lived in a converted closet and ate ramen for 4 years? You're exaggerating, my father dismissed. You always were dramatic. Actually, I said, I have proof. I nodded to James, who retrieved a portfolio from inside the house. This was part 3 of my plan, the evidence I'd been compiling for weeks. Michael, Have you ever wondered why I really left? Why I never came back? Let me show you. I opened the portfolio and pulled out a stack of childhood photos. Here's your 10th birthday. Remember that boat Dad bought you? Here's my 10th birthday the following year. I got a textbook on human anatomy. Michael frowned. That doesn't prove anything. I continued through the evidence. Report cards showing my straight A's next to Michael's B's and C's, with our parents' notes, expected on mine, great improvement, so proud, on his. Financial documents showing my emptied account. Photos of the tiny room I'd lived in during college. Screenshots of the Christmas text I'd sent that had been left unread. I tried to reconnect. I told him, multiple times over the years. Every attempt was rebuffed or ignored. Michael's certainty seemed to waver as he looked through the evidence. I didn't know. They said you wanted space. That you were focused on your career. They lied to you, I said gently. Just like they lied to Rebecca and her family about having permission to use my home. My mother stepped forward, her face contorted with rage. Enough of this performance. Michael, don't listen to her manipulation. She's trying to turn you against us on your wedding day. But Michael was staring at a particular document, a letter I'd written him 6 years ago that had been returned unopened, marked Return to Sender in my father's handwriting. Did you know about this? He asked our parents, his voice suddenly uncertain. She's always seeking attention, my father dismissed. We were protecting you from her drama. By hiding her letters to me, Michael asked. By lying about why she left? A subtle shift occurred in my brother's face, the first crack in the golden child facade I'd seen since childhood. For perhaps the first time, he was seeing our parents clearly. This whole time, he said slowly, I thought Allison abandoned us. That's what you told me. We did what was necessary, my mother insisted. Your sister made her choices. And you made sure those choices had the harshest possible consequences, I added quietly. My father had had enough. He stepped toward me aggressively, finger pointed. You ungrateful. Manipulative. Before he could finish, Officer Riley, who had been standing discreetly nearby, moved forward. Sir, I'm going to ask you to step back and lower your voice. This is a family matter, he shouted. This is potential harassment on private property, she corrected. And I'm still here because MS. Hayes expressed concerns about exactly this scenario. My father looked from the officer to me, his face mottled with fury. You called the police on your own parents? I protected myself from people who have consistently disregarded my boundaries, I corrected. Your relationship to me doesn't entitle you to mistreat me. Officer Riley stepped between us. I think it's time for you to leave, sir. Ma'am. Your son's wedding is proceeding at the hotel, and you should be there. After a tense moment, my mother grabbed my father's arm. Thomas. Let's go. We have guests waiting. We'll deal with this betrayal later. As they turned to leave, my father shot back one final barb. Don't ever expect to be welcome in this family again. I haven't been welcome for 10 years, I replied. Nothing has changed today except that I'm finally standing up for myself. They stormed to their car and drove away, leaving Michael standing alone, still holding the evidence of our parents' manipulation. I need to get to my wedding, he said finally, his voice subdued. You should, I agreed. Rebecca deserves her day. He hesitated, then asked, Did you really arrange the backup venue? Pay for it? Yes. The guests are innocent in all this. So is Rebecca. He nodded slowly. That was thoughtful. Considering everything. An awkward silence fell between us, a decade of separation and misunderstanding too vast to bridge in a moment. I didn't know, he finally said, about any of it. I believed them when they said you wanted nothing to do with us. And I believed I'd been completely forgotten, I replied. That no one even wondered how I was surviving. Michael looked down at the evidence in his hands, then back at my home. You did well for yourself. Despite everything. I did. I acknowledged. But it was harder than it needed to be. He handed the portfolio back to me. I should go. Rebecca is waiting. Of course. He turned to leave, then paused. Allison, after the honeymoon, maybe we could talk? I'd like to hear your side of things. The full story. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't even a clear acknowledgement of the harm done. But it was the first genuine communication from my brother in a decade, the first time he'd shown interest in my experience rather than our parents' narrative. I'd be open to that, I said carefully. He nodded once, then walked to his car and drove away. James put his arm around my shoulders as we watched Michael disappear down the road. You okay? I don't know. I answered honestly, but I think I will be. As we turned back toward our home, still peaceful, still ours. Boundaries now firmly established, I felt a strange mixture of grief and liberation. The family I'd been born into might never truly accept me, but I'd stood my ground. I'd protected what I'd built. And perhaps, just perhaps, a small door had opened for a different kind of relationship with my brother in the future. For now, that was enough. A week passed before I heard anything about the wedding. No angry calls from my parents. No messages from Michael. The silence was both a relief and oddly unsettling after the intensity of the confrontation. Then, on a quiet Sunday morning, an email arrived from Rebecca. Allison, I wanted to thank you for arranging the backup venue. Once we got past the initial shock, everything went beautifully. The Grand Lakeside Hotel was actually perfect, and their staff was incredible on such short notice. I'm sorry for the role I played in the situation with your home. I truly believed your parents had your blessing. Michael has been telling me more about your family history, and I realize now how complex things are. I hope someday we might get to know each other properly. Sincerely, Rebecca. Attached were a few photos of their ceremony in the hotel's garden pavilion, overlooking the same lake visible from my property, but from the opposite shore. They looked happy. The setting was elegant. No one viewing these images would ever guess the chaos that had preceded them. I browsed social media and found posts from various guests about the wonderful lakeside wedding, with no mention of the venue change or family drama. Rebecca's mother had shared professional photos with a simple caption, "A perfect day for Rebecca and Michael." The narrative had been successfully rewritten, the messy reality tidied away. That afternoon, my phone rang with Michael's number. "Hi," I answered cautiously. "Hey," he replied, equally tentative. "We're back from our mini honeymoon." I thought, maybe we could get coffee sometime. We arranged to meet at a neutral location halfway between our homes. When I arrived at the cafe 3 days later, I almost didn't recognize my brother. Gone was the entitled expression I remembered. He looked humbled. "Thanks for coming," he said as we sat with our drinks. "Of course." An awkward silence stretched between us. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," Michael finally began. "After seeing those photos, those letters, I started remembering things differently. How Mom and Dad always compared us. How they put so much pressure on you." I nodded, letting him continue. "They told me you cut us off. That you wanted nothing to do with the family because you were embarrassed by your choices." He stared into his coffee. "I believed them because it was easier than thinking they'd just thrown you away. It was easier for me to think you didn't care than to accept you chose their side." I admitted, I didn't choose. "I just didn't question," he corrected. "Which might be worse." Another silence, less awkward this time. "Rebecca likes you," he offered. "Says arranging that backup venue was incredibly classy given the circumstances." I smiled slightly. "She seems nice. I'm glad you found someone good. She's been pushing me to see a therapist, actually, to talk about our family dynamics." He looked almost embarrassed by the admission. "I'm starting next week." This surprised me more than anything else. In our family, therapy had always been dismissed as weakness, unnecessary drama. "That's really good, Michael. What about you?" he asked. "How did you? I mean, after everything. How did I survive?" I finished for him. It wasn't easy. But I found people who supported me for who I actually am, not who they wanted me to be. I built a chosen family. Like James, he nodded. Yes. And friends who became family. And a supportive professional community. Michael looked out the window. I keep thinking about what I missed. 10 years of your life. Your career. This amazing house you built. I miss things too, I reminded him. Your college graduation. Meeting Rebecca. Watching you become an adult. Do you think, is there any way to get some of that time back? I considered this carefully. We can't get back the past. But maybe we can build something new. Something healthier. What about mom and dad? He asked. That's more complicated, I admitted. They've shown no remorse, no recognition of the harm they caused. I can't have a relationship with people who refuse to respect my boundaries. I understand that better now, he said, after seeing how they acted at your house. It opened my eyes to a lot of things. We talked for nearly 2 hours, beginning the slow, careful work of reintroducing ourselves as the adults we'd become rather than the children we'd been. No miraculous healing, no instant family restoration, just small steps toward a potential relationship. As the weeks passed, I threw myself into work, using architecture as therapy the way I always had. My community center project won a major sustainability award. The recognition brought new clients, bigger opportunities. James proposed on a quiet evening at home, with no grand gesture beyond his heartfelt words and the promise of building our lives together as equal partners. I said yes without hesitation. I also found a therapist specializing in family estrangement and began the deep work of processing my childhood and the recent confrontation. In group therapy, I met others with similar experiences, golden children and scapegoats, all working to understand the family dynamics that had shaped them. Healthy families adapt to their children's individuality. My therapist explained during one session. Unhealthy families demand children adapt to rigid expectations. This simple framing helped me understand. The problem had never been my dreams or choices. The problem was a family system that couldn't accommodate difference or independence. 3 months after the wedding incident, Michael invited me to dinner at his home. Rebecca welcomed me warmly, showing me around with genuine pride. On their mantel sat a small, framed photo that caught me by surprise. Michael and me as children, arms around each other at some long-forgotten beach vacation, both smiling without self-consciousness. I found it in an old album, Michael explained, from before everything got complicated. It was a small gesture, but meaningful, an acknowledgement of our shared history and the innocent connection that had existed before our parents' expectations divided us. Our parents remained absent from my life, a fact that carried both grief and relief. Michael maintained his relationship with them but established new boundaries, refusing to participate in conversations that denigrated me or my choices. They don't understand why I'm suddenly taking your side, he told me. They probably never will. It's not about sides, I replied. It's about truth and respect. As I approached the 1-year anniversary of the wedding confrontation, I reflected on everything that had transpired and the lessons I'd learned. That family is defined by respect and love, not just blood and obligation. That maintaining boundaries isn't selfish, it's necessary for healthy relationships. That sometimes reconciliation isn't possible, but healing still is. That standing up for yourself can be terrifying but essential. That the story we tell ourselves about our worth shouldn't come from those who failed to see it. I had designed and built a beautiful home, but more importantly, I had designed and built a beautiful life, one founded on authentic relationships, meaningful work, and the courage to protect my own worth. In architecture, the strength of a structure depends on its foundation. In life, I discovered the same principle applies. By removing the cracked foundation of conditional acceptance and rebuilding on self-respect and healthy boundaries, I created something both beautiful and enduring. Have you ever had to establish difficult boundaries with family? What helped you find the courage to stand firm? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who might need to hear that standing your ground isn't selfish, it's self-preservation. Thank you for being part of this journey with me. And remember that the family you choose can be as meaningful as the family you're born into.